a number of other poorly functioning companies. If you had just given this to people in the form of a voucher and say, take this and spend anywhere and get educated to what you always wanted to be, then you would have replicated the 1946 transformation of America, where you had a GI Bill. We had the highest unemployment in peacetime history in 1946. We sent them all to college, and we started the American middle class. That's what stimulus is all about. Well, here's Chrysler. They're bankrupt too. Now remember that both Chrysler and General Motors were held as examples of the best lean Six Sigma companies in the United States. So you realize there's more to the story. And I am here to tell you that. Not that you will like it necessarily, but it is what you need to know. And this is Ford Motor. Ford Motor almost went bankrupt. If you see there in the dip there, the stock price briefly went down to zero. That's technically bankrupt. And when we look at Six Sigma, and I'm going to give up trying to make this computer move the way it should. So I'm going to look at this. Ford Motor, okay now. That's the origins of Six Sigma. It was a wonderful observation that if you're able to do 3.4 errors per million, and we know it's possible because Boeing Airlines are flying 8 Sigma, you are doing something enormous for mankind. And my sense of this is that if you go to the origins, Motorola started Six Sigma in 1985. Look how well they did. What is above the Dow Jones, which is the red line, is the contribution that Motorola did in those early years. But look what happened. They dropped below. They became a less than an average company in the US. They still had all their systems in place. Now here is General Electric. General Electric introduced Six Sigma in 1995, just after Jack Welch had his quadruple bypass heart operation, and he declared that all of the GE department was going to go into Six Sigma. The first quarter, the first sign that something is not perfect is that labor productivity went down. In 2000, labor productivity improvement was 0, and Jack Welch had to go. So the intriguing thing for us is that GE lost all of the capital appreciation that they achieved prior to Six Sigma, and that caused a lot of surprise around the world. So quality improved, and dramatically, but productivity decreased. So if you're asking why, and this is an important question, you have to say that if you go back to the most primitive definitions of productivity, and I give you better ones later, if you take out all the variation of the output and all the variation of the input, then the ratio becomes a constant. When you have a constant, there is no change in that ratio. When there's no change in that ratio, productivity improvement by definition is 0. And that is why you, who are eminent quality and productivity experts, will take action and make sure that this will not happen again. So basically, we have a country in the United States that froze completely in 1973. Freezing, I mean, the United States followed Detroit's example, and 80% of the Fortune 500 took out the variation in their output-input ratios. That means that productivity in the US dropped from 3.3% that they had since 1950 up to 1973, and fell to 0.9% between 1973 and 1995. That was less than what the US had before the Industrial Revolution. Our GDP would have been $44 trillion instead of $14 trillion if we had been as productive as many of your countries were, 5% per year, instead of 0.9% per year. So, I think that if you're doing something that's perfect, it's hard to make you change, isn't it? I know it is for me. If I find out that I can shave perfectly now, I'm not going to change shaving. Not even razors. I remember I went up to the person who was sitting at the registration desk at the hotel this morning, and I said, 3 nights I wake up, I walk out of the room, I turn where everyone would turn, I walk straight into a part of the hotel that no one should go. So I said, you need to put up an arrow here that points in that direction. And he said, I have to run that by management. And I said, this is a 112-year-old hotel. This is where you can shine. Go down and paint that damn arrow up there. And I don't want to waste my time in these very secret rooms. See, we strive for perfection, but once we have it, we don't want to get rid of it. It's human nature. You got to allow experimentation. So this is the revolving door on the first try. That's what we call the unfreezing. Richard Blythe yesterday pointed out that unless you practice Six Sigma systematically, so you get continuous improvement, you might fall into the same trap as the United States did. And I believe he's correct. Is he here? Well, let's honor him. You can do that when they're not here. It doesn't go to their heads. Now here's Toyota. Now if you look at Toyota and the Dow Jones average, there's no real difference between them. Toyota is an average company. Because Toyota competed with some really terrible companies. General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. They look pretty good by comparison. This is Honda. They are 200% above, no, 300% above the Dow Jones average. What is that? See, there you have Honda. See, isn't it exciting to sit there? It's like whenever I'm in Germany, the biggest thrill I have is to wait for the German verb. They never say it up front. And they can change it at the very last moment. This should be the diplomatic language. Yeah, you do too. So that's 300% above Dow Jones average. I don't know what they do in Honda that's different, but they do a heck of a lot different than Toyota is. And Toyota, Mr. Toyota himself came out in the year 2000 and said, we have to start innovating. But I think they were so busy showing off how well they were doing to all the people who visited Toyota, there was no time for innovating. And we will probably destroy the tours that people had and said, look at here, we're in development. Okay. That's a lot of money there. Are these different money from around the world?